This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. We're going to be learning today's Shiur, Leilei Nishmas, Moiz ben Avraham, the brother of my good friend Rabbi Shiurim, Neshama Shav Naliyah, should be a Melech Yosher for all the children and grandchildren, the whole Mishpacha, Ad B'yas Gol Tzedek.
Amen.
Okay, we have a very interesting topic today. And it's not for those who have a squeamish stomach. Your stomach has to be stable for this one. And the topic is embalming, autopsies, and cremation in Halacha. And it's a major topic, and hopefully we'll do it in 2 Shiurim. We'll spend 2 Shiurim on this. Okay. And we begin, I think most people know that la halacha, embalming is prohibited. You can't mummify a mess. Embalming. What's embalming? Lachanot, chanita. Where you remove the vital organs, and you supplant it with chemicals, preservatives, formaldehyde, glycerin, and other chemicals.
Because you need all the parts.
And the main reason why this is prohibited is it's nivel hames. It's nivel hames.
Only to human being?
Yeah. It's nivel hames. Nivel hames means only to Yidden. It's nivel hames. Nivel hames means it's disrespectful to the body. The same way we know when a person's alive, he is not the Baal over his body. The body does not belong to him. La'achar misa, the body does not belong to him either. And you cannot do with it as you like. And that's why there's a mitzvah of kvura. And chanita, embalming, is prohibited.
What about Yaakov Avinu?
So what about Yaakov Avinu? We know Yaakov Avinu was embalmed, right? They spent a long time preserving the body of Yaakov Avinu, as well as Yosef. Yosef was embalmed, and we'll see what this has to do with this week's Parsha. So we begin with Rabbeinu Bechaye, and according to Rabbeinu Bechaye, if we learn what he says, we could all go home. We don't need any shiur. Okay? Let's take a look at Rabbeinu Bechaye. Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, Vayachantu haroifim. Rabbeinu Bechaye says in Parshas Vayechi, what is chanata? Inyan hachanata haya shahaya merakchim oisai bebesamim. They would smear the body with different perfumes, vizonim, and spices. Right? In other words, you're not removing anything, you're not taking out any vital organs, you're not draining the blood, you're just smearing, moisturizers and creams and perfumes, preservatives. Ke'inyan shekasa v'asa hamelech, like it's written by Asa. It says in, I believe, Divrei Hayamim about Melech Asa, vayashkiveo b'mishkav, they laid him on the bed, asher mile b'samim, b'zanim, that was full of spices and many various types of spices, merkachim, blended, b'merkaches masa, with the skill. In English it says the apothecary's art, whatever that means. What? Okay. Okay. He was one of the Malchei Yehuda. V'zeh haya achar, one of the Malchei, either one of the Malchei Yehuda or Malchei Yisrael. This is after you wash them. What? Yeah. Okay. Okay, fine. So that's what Rabbeinu Bechaye says. Rabbeinu Bechaye says, what is chanata? By Yaakov Avinu, it has nothing to do with taking out the vital organs, and nothing to do with draining the blood. Merely what they did was they smeared the body with perfumes to preserve the body. And according to Rabbeinu Bechaye, we have no question, we see by Yaakov Avinu they did chanata, because they didn't really do what we call embalming. They didn't take out the heart, the liver, the intestines.
So how today they lend this to other people that got an accident, they need the,
organ donating?
Yes. Is this against the halacha?
Simply, in most cases, yes. Yeah. No, he's talking about organ donating. It's a separate topic, really. Because organ donating, first of all, once the body is completely dead, so the organs are useless. They also die very quickly. Once the person is completely dead, you can't. The organs don't have any value. After brain death, if somebody chas v'shalom is brain dead but the heart is still working, the organs have value. The thing is, if you take out the organ, you're killing the person. It's ritzicha. So basically, Mimanav Shach, after Misa, it doesn't do anything. And before death, after brain death, you're killing the person. If you take out the person's heart, you're right Seyach. So,
Poskim said that the Mavet clinical Mavet is like when the heart is still working and the Moach is not working. This is okay.
So it depends what you consider death, and that's beyond the scope of the Shiur today. Okay, we're not going to be discussing organ donating. But Ezra Hashem, one day we'll get up to that. Okay. Okay, so far the embalming that we saw by Yaakov Avinu was merely smearing the body with oils. Now that's not the traditional embalming that they used to do in Egypt. If you go to the Brooklyn Museum, Metropolitan Museum, right, the Museum of Natural History, and you want to see Ramses. We're not talking. They didn't smear his body with. They removed his organs, and we'll see about that. But besides that, you should know in most mortuaries in the United States of America, they're doing full-fledged embalming, right, for viewing. What do you think they do? We'll see.
We just did it to the president of North Korea.
They take out the vital organs.
The radium was out for almost 1 month.
Okay, it's a process. We'll see. Okay.
Did they do that on yours also?
According to Rabbeinu Bechai, we could say that what do they do to Yosef? They merely smeared the skin with different spices. Okay? The same as Yaakov. And Rabbi said, besides Rabbeinu Bechai, the Zohar HaKadosh says the same explanation as Rabbeinu Bechai, that what they did to Yaakov Avinu was merely smearing the skin with various preservatives. Says the Zohar in Parshas Vayechi. It's brought down, it's quoted in the Sefer Gesher HaChaim. Amar Rabbi Abba, Chanita de Yaakov Ma'ihu. What exactly did they do to Yaakov Avinu? Amar Le. So they said, Zil Shol Asya, go ask the doctors. What are you asking me what they did to Yaakov Avinu? Tachazi, come and see. Ksiv, Vayitzav Yosef es Avodav es Haroifim. Lach noid es Aviv, Vayachan to Haroifim es Yisrael. Says the Zohar, Salkedaitach Kashar b'nei Nosha, Havachanot Ada. You think they preserved Yaakov? You think they embalmed him like they embalm every other guy, every other Shegetz? Itema. If you're going to say begin or chahuda avdu, that the reason why they had to embalm Yaakov is because it takes a long trip from Egypt to the Maras HaMachpelah, and by the time they would get to the Maras HaMachpelah in that hot desert sun, the body would start to decay. That's not the reason they embalmed him. Because they embalmed Yosef also, and they never brought Yosef to Mitzrayim. Haksiv, Vayamas Yosef, right? Vayisem ba'aron b'Mitzrayim, haloi azli imei ba'archa. Yosef never went with Yaakov on the road. So don't say the purpose of Chanata is for the long trip, because Yosef didn't take a long trip.
But he went 40 years, Yosef. 40 years he was in the desert.
Yeah, but he was in the ground.
But he buried in Israel.
Later on.
So that's the purpose, probably.
But the Egyptians didn't know what's going to be in 40 years later. So don't say the Chanata was for the long road. The Hatamonit Kabar. He was buried right there. So rather, what did they do? Ela archa de malchen inon. This was what they used to do to kings. Begin lekaima gufayo, to preserve the body. Chanti loin b'mashech rabos. They embalmed them with a lot of perfume and a lot of spices. Shemen, b'meshech rabos, with shemen. Ilah kol mishkan, the finest type of oil. Mu'urav b'bisman, mixed with spices. Bishayev le begufa, and it got absorbed into the body. They used to put these spices on the body, and it was nivla on the body. Yoima basa yoima, day after day. Be'ahu mishchatava, with that good oil, arba and yoimin, 40 days. T'chsiv yimlu loy arba and yoim, kikem yimlu yimei hachanutim, basar de ishtalim da. After this process, kaima, gufa, shlim, zimnin, sagin, the body would remain whole for a very long time.
How much is long time?
Till today.
Yeah, you're right. You go there, you see it.
Till today. Why do they have to do this? Says the Zohar, because in the land of Egypt and the land of Eretz Yisrael, bodies decay very quickly. What? The body decays. Because of the climate, because of the weather, the body decays quickly. Begin the cholahu ara dechnan, the ara de Mitzrayim, mechala gufa. The body decays away, and it quickly turns rotten. Mikol Sharara, more than any other lands. Of again, Lekaima Gufa Avdei Da, in order to preserve the body, they did this. Ba'avdi Chanita Da Migoyu Mibara, they put the spices on the outside, they put the spices on the inside. How'd they get it on the inside? Right, we're saying that according to Rabbeinu Bechai and according to the Zohar, they never cut up and they never removed any organs of Yaakov Avinu. They merely preserved it with spices. How'd they get it on the inside? Migoy deshaven hahu mishcha al tibura. They put it on the navel. And we'll see, Chassam Sofer quotes somebody, that the body, al-achar misa, is the same as the body before it's born. Right? We know before a body is born, the eyes are closed, the navel is open. When a person's alive, the tabur. When a person's alive, the eyes open, the navel closes. La'achar misa, the navel opens, the eyes close. That's what the Chassam Sofer quotes. So they put it into the tabur. V'hu al b'tibur lagai. It would go inside the tabur. V'ishtav v'mai. It was absorbed in the intestines. V'kam le lagufa migai o mibar lazimnas agin. And the body lasted a long time. Okay. So,
what's the point? I mean, once you inter a person,
yeah,
you cover him up, you put him at seva, and that's it. You don't. What do you have to?
Why did they do this?
Yeah, what's the reason?
This was the minhag for the important people. They wanted to preserve them.
What, after they put him into the kever or what?
No, it doesn't. They
put him in a museum.
They put him in a box. Yeah, they left him in a box.
In a glass box and another.
Out of glass, wood, whatever they kept it in.
You can't see what's the point of preserving.
It was an honor. It was an honor. We'll see why they did this. We'll see at the end of the shiur why they did this. Okay? But Rabbi say, according to, we started off the shiur saying that embalming chanata is asur lahalacha, it's nivel hameis. So we asked, how could they do it to Yaakov Avinu? So Rabbeinu Bechaye and the Zohar both say what they did to Yaakov Avinu was not really chanata. It was merely a way of preserving it by applying various preservatives on the outside.
But the Torah writes, "Vayitzav Yosef et harofim lachanot et avi."
Can.
The word lachanot appears there.
So the Rabbeinu Bechaye is saying lachanot can also mean this. This is another possible meaning of chanata.
This is by request of Yosef that they did it this way, or
Yes, Yosef,
for the Malach, for pharaohs they did it the real thing.
That was the okay. So I guess according to Rabbeinu Bechaye and according to the Zohar, maybe Yosef used his influence to do this alternative form of chanata. Okay, so according to Rabbeinu Bechaye, according to the Zohar, there's nothing to talk about. There's no question from Yaakov Avinu. However, the Abarbanel learns kipshutai, that what they did to Yaakov Avinu was full-fledged chanata. Look at the Abarbanel in number 3. The Abarbanel in Parshas Vayechi, V'Amar Vayitzav Yosef es avadav haroifim. Yosef commanded his servants, the doctors, shahayu avadav lefi shahayu noyeg b'tachsisei hamelachim. They practiced the general custom of kings. They applied the practice, the traditional practice of embalming. What is embalming? Behem chantu es Yisrael. They embalmed Yaakov Avinu. V'hachanata hi hoitzas hamoyach. Embalming means to remove the brain, v'halev, and the heart, v'hakaved, and the liver, v'chein hameyayim, and the intestines, v'hameriros, and all the bitterness of the guf, mitoich haguf. Yeah, right. V'yimshchu haguf mibayis michutz b'shemen hafarsamay. They would anoint the body from the inside and the outside with different kinds of perfume. V'molei hakrovayim mibayis michutz mimine b'samim hameyavshim lachluchas haguf. They filled up the body with various chemicals and spices that dried out the body. You have to change it every day. You got to change these spices every day. And in a matter of time, yishar haguf yavesh. The body remains dry. Vikasha al maskunta, and hard, in a perfect state. Mibli shino yever me'evarav. It's able to be preserved in the most perfect way. V'nira hames kilu yashen. The body looks like it's sleeping peacefully. Wow. V'la yisapesh. It doesn't rot. V'la yisrach, it doesn't reek. V'la yisrach gumi menu b'nei adam. People don't go away from it. We know the smell of a mace is a very overwhelming smell. This process works. 1, 2, 3. You're as good as new. You're as good as new.
Better.
Abarbanel says this is what they did to Yaakov Avinu. I just point out, this is what they do in the United States of America today in most mortuaries, if that's how you say it. And there's a very famous, that's, where they take the body for Goyim, they bring it to the morgue, the moratorium, right? And that's where they take care of the body. And many people, I think it's a very high percent, they get embalmed. For all practical purposes, what do? There's a famous article by somebody by the name of Jennifer Mitford, who sort of exposed the way they bury people, the way they preserve the bodies in the United States of America. And the hakdama to this article is you need a very stable stomach to really to read. I'll just read you a couple of things. If you want to know whether embalming is nivel hames or not, so let's take a look at what they do. Look what she writes. She says, "Alas, how surprised one would be to see how his counterpart of today is whisked off to the funeral parlor, and in short order is sprayed, sliced, pierced, pickled, waxed, trimmed, creamed, rouged, neatly dressed, transformed from a common corpse into a beautiful memory picture." Okay. I'll read to you one other thing. He says, every operator has a favorite injection and drainage point. Okay? About 3 to 6 gallons of dyed and perfumed solution of formaldehyde, glycerin, borax, phenol, alcohol, and water is soon coolating through Mr. Jones, whose mouth has been sewn together with a needle directed upward between the upper lip and the gum brought out through the left nostril.
And a woman wrote that.
If there are any problems with the teeth, it's not a problem. The teeth are cleaned with bonami and coated with colorless nail polish. Okay, so if you want to know whether embalming is nivel hames, ein lecha nivel gadol mizu. Ein lecha nivel gadol mizu. Okay.
What's the reason they took out the heart and the liver and all that?
Because these things decay.
Yes.
The purpose of the embalming process is to preserve the body. They take out all the vital organs and they pump in formaldehyde and all these chemicals that preserve the body. Okay, and that's what they do for the viewing, right? You have a dead guy. They move the lips up in a upward motion so that the body has a pleasant expression. Okay, but that's after cutting, slicing, and dicing the body like a piece of steak.
For birds.
What?
Birds is very, very common to put formalin inside the bird.
Okay, but that's not that you could do. The problem is when you do it to Adam. Okay, so again, yeah.
He was sick for a long time, so I would go to hospital visiting in San Francisco, and he looked really, really bad. He was a very strong person, but he looked very bad. And he passed away. And his family asked me, they begged me to go to the funeral. So I told them, I said, if you put him in the church, I cannot go. So if you put him in the funeral home, maybe I go there. And they were counting on me to go. So I went there, and I saw they had him there. He looked so good. He was in his suit, with his best suit, best shirt, nice tie, and cosmetically, they fixed up his face so nice.
And if there's any,
his hair was combed, and he looked so good.
If there's any problem with the color, the person has jaundice. They know how to color the face with layers and layers of makeup. And sometimes for an added touch, they'll stick in the hand a special pipe, his favorite pipe or book. So, he could take it with him. So if you want to know about nivel hames, ein lecha nivel gadol mizu.
They could look at themselves too because they have a mirror above the
Okay. But, again, according to Rabbeinu B'chaye and the Zohar, this is not what they did to Yaakov Avinu. According to Abarbanel, they classically embalmed Yaakov Avinu. So, halacha l'maisa. Even if we say that cutting up a mace is nivel hames, but perhaps if you're doing it to beautify the mace and to preserve the base, maybe that's not nivel. Maybe that's a tayeles. And in fact, there are poskim who say it is permitted. It's a benefit. It's a benefit for the mace. Let us first examine at the end of Shmuel Aleph, Vayakumu Kolish Chayil. This is talking about the death of Shaul HaMelech. All the warriors got up, Vayelchu Kol HaLayla. They went the whole night. Vayikchu es Gvi HaShol, it says they, after Shaul was killed, they took Shaul's body, V'es Gvi HaSbanav, and the bodies of his children, Mechaimas Beishan, from the wall of Beishan, Vayavayu Yavesha, they brought it to Yavesh, Vayisrfu Oisam Sham, and they burnt the bodies of Shaul and his children there. So what did they do? What, they cremated Shaul?
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, Ukiloy Alehoin, they burnt him, Kama de Kalan al Malchaya Taman, like they burn kings. That's what Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says.
Where are you reading?
In number 5, on the bottom, the last two lines. So we'll see. What does Targum Yonasan ben Uziel mean when he says, they burnt him like they burn kings? The Radak has two explanations for the Targum. If you look in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah and the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it talks about when a king would die, they would take all his possessions. They would take his throne, they would take his property, they would take all of his royal instruments, and they would burn it. As if to say, he's so great, no one else is worthy to use these items. So says the Radak, you know what Targum means that they burnt Shaul and his sons? Chas v'shalom, they cremated Shaul and his sons. They burnt his furniture and his throne and his possessions, but not that they burnt him. That's the first pshat of the Radak.
So what they did with his body?
Yeah.
They buried the body. Vayisrfu Oisam does not go on the Gviyos. Vayisrfu Oisam is going on, says the Radak in number 6, Targum Yonasan, V'kalu Alehon, and they burnt them, Kama de Kalan al Malchaya. Like they used to burn kings, Taman. Efshar Shahaya Daita, it could be, says Radak. You know what the Targum means? Kamaisha Kasu Rabbi Seinozal, like Chazal tell us in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Sarfin al Hamalachim. They burn the king's possessions. Umahim Sarfin aleim mitasan, uklei tashmishan. Okay, so that's the first pshat of the Radak. What does Targum mean? They burnt? They burnt his stuff, his possessions. Oy, or another pshat. You know what it means they burnt? Daitai al sreifas besamim. They burnt spices. Kamay vayachat tu haroifim. In other words, they didn't burn the body. You know how when you burn spices, it produces ketairas, a very pleasant aroma. So they burnt these spices to preserve the body of Shaul. So these are the two, right, incense. These are the two explanations of the Radak for the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. Number 1, either they burnt his possessions. Number 2, they burnt incense. Says the Tosfos Yamtif in Masechta Psachim. An amazing thing. If you look at number 7, on the 5th line, V'li nira, says the Tosfos Yamtif. Now, according to both explanations of Radak, they didn't touch the vital organs of Shaul HaMelech. Either they burnt his possessions, or they just burnt Besamim. Says Tosfos Yamtif,
He was in 2 pieces because they cut his head off and his shoulder, like they pushed him.
okay, but doesn't mean that, right. But the embalming process did not further cut him up, according to the Radak.
He's in 2 pieces, basically. Yeah.
Says the Tosfos Yamtif, V'li nira shehasreifa musav al hagviyos. I hold that when the Navi says they burnt them, it means they burnt their bodies. What does that mean? They cremated Shaul? No! The chemicals used in the embalming process are like acid, and they tear through the flesh, and they burn the skin, and they burn the vital organs. That's what it means, Vayisrfu. L'fisha bismei hachanota sarfim arsam. The spices of embalming burns. V'hinei heyed hakasav. The pasuk testifies later, Shaloi kavru acharei hasreifa, that the only thing they burned, kiyim ho'atzamas, all that was left was the bones. According to Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, that they burnt their throne, or they burnt spices. Why did they just bury the bones? What about the flesh and all the body parts? It must be, says the Tosfos Yamtiv, that I am correct, that you know what it means, vayisrfu? They use the chemicals of chanata to burn through the flesh.
That's a good riot.
Rabbi say, what?
It's a good riot. That's what it is, because the Yisrafu, they were burnt it, the bones also were burnt.
Yeah, but the Radak says something else. The Radak in there.
How many bones left to
something
burn?
else, the Radak.
It's not so pasha to burn bones.
No, yes it is.
Even though, that's a separate thing. In America, we'll talk about when we get to cremation, people think you send it to the to burn. The bones could take a very long time to burn, and sometimes they think they give the family ashes. It's lav dafka, the ashes of their relative. It could be the ashes of the last guy who his bones haven't finished burning yet.
The Radak
The Radak said he didn't finish the Radak.
I didn't. You're right. I didn't finish Radak.
Why? He said a different opinion too.
I know.
He said the basar, but the bones they bury it.
According to Radak, they cremated him.
Exactly.
According to Radak.
No.
It's two opinion in the Radak.
ייתכן לפרש כי הבשר שרפו שאלה רמה ריגמה.
Oh, I'm not reading that yet.
Yeah, but here, Rabbi Glatstein, here they do in the oven and they burn completely the body. In the oven, in a big
That's
vault
what they
of
say.
electricity.
That's what they say.
Very hot flame.
It does burn the whole thing.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard it's very controversial, but we'll talk about that. The naskoi. Naskoi, it's called. Correct.
I know a story.
Right,
Torah on that.
on the Lisbon.
Yeah.
For the naskoi from Lava Malka.
Huh?
That bone gets nourishment from Lava Malka.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. By the way, I'll tell you something very interesting. Some Sofer writes in a tshuva, we talk about whether bones rotting, there's one bone that doesn't rot. So some Sofer says that we know there's the naskoi. Some Sofer says, it has another name. Some Sofer says, but there's a pasuk in Mishlei, urekavat samais kina, that jealousy also causes the bones to rot. Some Sofer says that's talking about the other bones. But someone who doesn't have kina, none of the bones rot. Some Sofer says.
Yeah, of course.
That's why he says that it talks about they found pits of with full of bones. Some Sofer said, what, full of bones? What, they're all the naskoi bone? Some Sofer says. Well, it's all the luz? It can't be all the luz. Not impossible. The whole pit is. Well, how do they get a pit full of naskois?
The chida, the brought is at Samon. It was complete as the day that he was dying. Because Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, he was the Rabbi Rashi of Israel. He did it. He did the tahara for it.
Really?
And it was complete. He said,
When they moved to Vilna Gaon, when the Vilna Gaons moved from the old cemetery, when the Russians wanted to build a road on the highway, when they took the Vilna Gaon out, so he was still covered. The tachrichim were holes. The Chevra Kadisha, they could feel his beard.
Wow.
They didn't open it up, but they feel his beard was still. He was complete.
Wow.
The Vilna Gaon.
So says the Tosfos Yom Tov. By the way, Rabbi, so now we're going to see what does it have to do with this week's Parsha. According to Tosfos Yom Tov, Vayisrafu Isaiah means through the Chanata process, and that's why it says they bury the bones. What does it say in this week's Parsha? Vayikach Atzmos Yosef. Why Atzmos Yosef? With the whole body. The answer is
the basar.
Because if they did the full-fledged Chanata process, there is no basar left. That's why Dafka says, Atzmos Yosef. Who says that? Abarbanel, look back at number 3. The second to last line. The Abarbanel says, what did they do to Yaakov and Yosef? They embalmed him completely. V'ha'ed she Yosef nechnat. What's the proof that Yosef was embalmed? Gam kein shenemar, vayikach Moshe es Atzmos Yosef. Kikfar kala habasar, the basar had already disintegrated. Okay, now says the Tosfos Yom Tov, how can I say that they embalmed Shaul HaMelech, but isn't it Nivel HaMes? Says the Tosfos Yom Tov, it's not Nivel HaMes. 2 lines from the bottom. Ava b'sreifas hachanota sheyesh boi toyeles gadol. Says the Tosfos Yom Tov, when it comes to embalming, it's not Nivel, it's a great benefit. Shelo yisapesh, v'lo yasriach, v'rima lo tishleit boi. These are good benefits. The body doesn't decay and rot and smell. V'lo yisrachku min b'nei adam, v'lo yitzrach lashminon. That's permitted. Paskins of Tosfos Yom Tov halacha l'maisa, you could embalm.
It's like dissolving the meat, right? This is it.
In like an acidic type of, yes.
Years ago, there were 2 burials. One, the dead body was put in a box until the flesh rotted.
And then,
If it was only bones, they were put in another box.
They put it together with all the avos, with all the family. Tosfos Yom Tov talks about that in the beginning, the 2 stages that they used to do. Okay. Rabbi said, does anybody else say it's mutter? So far, even though Rabbeinu Bechaya and the Zayar say they did not actually embalm Yaakov Avinu, the Abarbanel says they did. The Tosfos Yom Tov says it's mutter. And the Rashba, one of the great Rishonim, one of the great Poskim Rishonim, also says it's mutter. Says the Rashba, look at number 8. Ruvain siva b'shas p'tirasai sheyisu oisai likbar oisai al-makam k'varas avaisa. A guy dies, Pliny dies, and at the time of the p'tira, he gives the following tzivoi, that he wants to be buried with the mishpacha. Something happened the day of the p'tira, they couldn't get the body out in time. They buried him temporarily, and now now they want to bring him to the family. And it's very difficult to carry the body now because the body is in the middle of decaying and it smells. Right? While the flesh is still rotting, it's very putrid. Are you allowed to put lime on the body? To speed up the process. Is this a disgrace? Or not? Are you causing pain to the mace? Says the Rashba, Tshuva, Kol kihai she'oisin la'achal b'sari mahira. Whatever is done to expedite the disintegration of the flesh, k'dei lisa z'makam shetziva mutter. You're allowed to do it. She'ein kan mishum bizayon. There's no disgrace over here. Whatever process you're doing to speed up the disintegration, ve'ein kan mishum tsar. There's no bizayon. There's no pain. She'ein basar hameis margish bizemo koshkein besid. A dead body can't feel a knife. It certainly can't feel lime. V'hachanutin a karenoisan. The embalmers tear the body open.
The Gemara said that like you feel any needle.
Right? He quotes the Gemara in Brachos.
הנה, כשר. כבשר חי.
We learned that the neshama feels distress.
The neshama feels distress. But the body, look what he says, V'hachanutim karenoisan, u'moitziin meyehen, ve'ein kan loy mishum tsar, ve'loy mishum bizayon. There's no pain, there's no disgrace. So we have some pretty big guns over here that say you're allowed to do it. The Abarbanel says that's what they did to Yaakov Avinu. Tosfos Yom Tov says it's mutter, that's what they did to Shaul. The Rashba says it's mutter. How do we paskin? It's aser. We know how to do it. Look at the Ramah very carefully. The Ramah writes, Ein meilichin meis meir sheyesh ba kfuras leir acheres. You can't transfer a mace from one city to the next, elam kain mechutz la'aretz la'aretz, unless you're taking the body to Eretz Yisrael. You want to disinter the body and move it to Eretz Yisrael. That you could do. Or you want to move somebody to be buried together with the mishpacha, you're allowed to move. What if it's a long distance? Now look carefully at the Ramah. If the mace had commanded you to move from one place to the next, if the mace tells you to move from one place to the next, or from the house to the Beis HaKfaros, you listen. Says the Ramah, Umutter litin sidalav. You're allowed to put lime on the body, kedei la'achal habasar, to cause the flesh to disintegrate, maher, ulahaylicha l'makam hashatziva, and to bring the body to the place that he commands. In other words, according, like the Rashba said, and he's quoting the Rashba in the Tshuva we just read, the Ramah is passing like the Rashba, that in order to temporarily preserve the body, to move it from one kever to the next, you could apply sid to the outside of the body. But the Ramah does not go so far as to say what the Rashba said, that you could cut up the body to remove vital organs or to remove blood. In other words, we're stopping short. You want to put medicants, creams, preservatives on the outside, if necessary, it may be permitted. To cut, dice, go inside the body, we don't allow that. We don't allow that.
What is the freezer today that they put in the freezer? It's like the seed.
I don't know.
Just to preserve it.
What is the seed also to preserve it? No?
The preserve is the opposite. It speeds up the decay of the flesh so that you don't have to smell it. You just atzamas.
They put it in a dry ice today.
I don't know. What do they do when they take the body to Eretz Yisrael?
Dry ice.
Yeah.
Okay. If you'll see, usually the final word on these type of halachos is the Gesher HaChaim. Gesher HaChaim is Rabbi Chiel Michal Tukachinsky, who wrote the authoritative work on Avelus and all related inyanim. And he's usually the final word on these halachos. But still, a lot of this may be outdated. I don't think they do some of these procedures today. Let's take a look how he concludes. Look at number 10. Says the Gesher HaChaim, Im kedai lachnot meis Yisrael. Is it worthwhile? Does it make sense to embalm a Jewish body? There's a great dispute among the great authorities about this. There are two possible problems. Number one, nowadays they drain the blood. They drain the blood. And sometimes they even remove the innards. That's what they do today in America. So that would be nivel hames. And number two, shenis, gormim sheyisachar ichol habasar. The procedures that they do delay, retard the decay process. And one of the main purposes of kvura is that the body should decay. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that the kapara occurs not just by the kvura, but by the ichol habasar. When the flesh decays, that's part of the kapara. So delaying that process, you're stopping the kapara process, right? So what should we do halacha l'maisa? So says Rabbi Chiel Michal Tukachinsky. V'hanog, the minhag is like this. If you have to carry the body a day or two in the heat, osim peula milachotis. Kagon chanita. You could apply. You could perform some type of procedure. Ra kedei la'akev rekuva v'serchona. In other words, you want to apply certain medications and certain perfumes and spices to slow down the decay process. That you're allowed to do temporarily. But ve'ein motziin es damai. Do not take out the blood. Okay. By the way, the Gesher HaChaim says if you need to put it into the body through the mouth or through the navel, it's permitted. That's how the Shalas Teshuvos Tzafnas Paneach also paskins. You can't make any incisions. You can't intrude the body. But through an already existing orifice, you could stick it in. Okay? However, but if it's a far trip, Kamay me America liYerushalayim, you could remove the blood through a machine. I don't think they do that today, right? I don't think.
It's a short trip, even though it's a long distance.
Yeah, I don't think they still do that today. But if necessary, he says that would be permitted. Okay. What do you do with the blood once you've drawn the blood, if necessary? He says, what?
Put it back.
He needs to kill. What you should do is you should put this blood in a container, and bury it together with the mace. Even though he says, according to most poskim, blood lachar misa is not chayiv and kfura, and it's only a hiddur, nevertheless, this type of blood, he says, that we remove on our own, does need kfura. Okay, so basically we have two opinions, right? We have the opinion of the Zohar, the opinion of Rabbeinu Bechaye. They never did this procedure to Yaakov Avinu and to Yosef HaTzadik. However, according to Abarbanel, they did do this to Yaakov Avinu. So you'll ask, according to Abarbanel, why don't we learn out from Yaakov Avinu if they were able to do this to him, and Yosef commanded this should be done to him? Why don't we learn out? There's a mitzvah of Chanata from Yaakov. Says the Maritz Chios. Something very interesting. The Maritz Chios writes in Siman Vav, we see they embalmed Yaakov Avinu. The Nilmadim came to Chayva, so we should learn out. There's a chiyuv to do chanata. Or at least it's permitted to embalm. And And yet we know, and look what the Maritzchi is paskins halach lamaisa, uledida napachu. For us, it's just the opposite. Hachanita asura mishum nivol detzrichim lenatecho ibarim. For us, halach lamaisa, chanata is prohibited. So look a little bit down. What's the answer? So why don't we learn out from Yaakov Avinu? It was before the Torah was given. And you cannot learn out from what they did before the Torah was given to what they did after the Torah was given. You can't learn out. You want to learn out, you're allowed to marry two sisters because Yaakov married two sisters. Okay? Fine. So says the Maritzchios, Chanata is an Isel Daraisa. Embalming is prohibited in the Torah. Yaakov Avinu, before the Torah was given. Don't hack me with what happened before the Torah was given. Okay. Let us...
It also that some poskim said that they're not allowed to pull your teeth.
Yeah, but don't we say...
There's another thing. You can't have Hana. What, after the Achar Misa?
No, during the life. It's better to keep all the teeth, like some... I think it was the Chafetz Chaim, I don't know.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I have.
Don't we say that the Abbas did...
It's better to bury all the teeth.
No.
Yes.
Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to marry two sisters either.
That's a kasha. That's a big question. And there are different answers to that. You can look in the Nefesh HaChaim, the various answers, Maral. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, if they did something before the Torah was given, you don't learn out. You can't learn out.
We actually learned it once. We had it there.
Even though...
Gershon's guy, because it's Shnoiva.
Gershon's guy, that's the Maral says. Right? There are various answers. Okay.
You thought it was.
Okay. I just want to point out two more things. Okay. Let us take a look for a moment at the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer says a very pashut reason why we're not going to learn out from Yaakov Avinu. Why? Look what he says. Look in number 13. V'tema, Chassam Sofer says, Shalahevi mi Yosef shehechnet aviv Yaakov. Why don't we learn out from the fact that Yosef embalmed his father Yaakov? Uv'chidushe Torah shali Parshas Vayechi kasavti. Says the Chassam Sofer, I wrote in my chidushim on Chumash, Al Pimasha Kasav Leket HaKemach Al Mishnayos. One of the Mefarshim Al Mishnayos tell us, so Parakeh de Psachim, Al Piderach HaZayar, quoting the Zayar that we saw, right, the Zayar says Chas v'Shalom, they never really embalmed Yaakov. Shechalilo like Pischu Beten Yaakov, they never opened up Yaakov's stomach. V'lo Yetziu B'nei Me'av, they never removed his intestines. Ela Derach Tiburai Hechnisei Ho Afarsamayim. The Zayar says that they stuck it into the navel of Yaakov. The Derech Piv Shal Meis Yefsher. You can stick it into the mouth of a mace. Why not? The Mishameis Nistam HaPeh B'niftach HaTabor. This is what we mentioned before. When a person passes away, the mouth closes, the navel opens. Kamay Shahaya B'mei Imai. The same way the body was in utero. Nekev Katan Kachot Asara. V'sham Hechniso HaRoifim HaFarsamayim. So the Chassam Sofer goes on to say that what good would it do to stick in these spices into the tibor of Yaakov Avinu if the digestive system is mole saya, if it's full of excrement? So what good is it going to do to preserve the body? But there's all kinds of waste material inside. So the Chassam Sofer says that, quoting the Ramban says by Yaakov Avinu, it says, what? Vayigva. What does that mean? According to Ramban, Vayigva means there was there was a digestive problem that caused the intestines to disintegrate on their own. That's what, if you look in the Ramban, that's what happened to Yaakov Avinu. In that case, says the Chassam Sofer, there was no problem like the Zayar says, to stick in these spices, darach tiburai, because there was no waste product. That waste product had disintegrated on their own. Okay, Rabbi said, let's end off with the Yaros Tavash of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, and in general it gives us an understanding why were the Egyptians so hooked up on embalming, right? Everybody knows. In Egypt, right, everybody's embalmed, from Paroi to their cats, right? You could go to the museums. Not only were the kings embalmed, they embalmed the cats also.
Horses.
Well, what's that all about? So
memory to know that it was Egypt.
So one of the Farshim said, well, the Zohar said, in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Eretz Yisrael, it was a very dry, hot climate, and things disintegrated very quick, and that's why they embalmed. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, there was a very deep reason why, number 14, why in Mitzrayim they embalmed. He says an amazing thing. What? Listen to this.
We should know that all this was true.
All this is
evidence.
True. We should know there was a parai.
Yeah, we have evidence.
Look what he says.
Like they say, why we have Chamei Tveria. This is the leftover from the Mabul, to know that, remember that the Mabul could come any time. Chamei Tveria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look what the Yaris Tavash says. Look at number 14. V'zehu inyan she'amru, Yaakov loimes. The Gemara in Masechta Taina says, Yaakov Avinu loimes. Eh? Hakavana, what does that mean? Kishar tzadikim mishtadfim rakim b'nei doram. Other tzadikim, they protect their generation. Aval lo yosef, but not more. Aval Yaakov mishtatev im kol dar v'dar leval yazvu es Hashem. Yaakov Avinu participates with every generation that they should not forsake Hashem. Ulekach amar Hashem, that's why Hashem says, b'nei Yaakov lechilisi, ki tamid Yaakov mishtatev imayim. So let's take a look. Skip a line. Ki Mitzrayim shahayu chointim mesim shalahem haya b'shvil kach. You know why in Egypt they embalm people? Ki yadu, because in Egypt they knew shekol zman she'aguf kayam yesh lenefesh devekas b'guf. So long as the body is intact, the soul clings to the body, and this is our tradition also. That for until the body decays, the neshama hovers over the kever. The soul is connected to the body so long as the body is intact. So why the Mitzrayim embalm? Because Mitzrayim was proficient in kishuf. How did they do their kishuf? Not like the Malbim said we learned a few weeks ago, it was sleight of hand. They were Dorish al HaMesim. They contacted the dead. Now, if they're going to contact the dead, they don't want a long-distance phone call. They want local charges. So if they want local charges, they have to keep the neshama close by. So therefore, they embalmed all the bodies. This way, the neshamas are hovering right here in this world. This way, they could be darish al hamesim. Ki yadu shekozman sheguf kam yesh namet zvekes begup. V'chol inyanim haya lidrosh l'nesim. V'chol tachlis hakishav v'lat shalhem haya yidei neshamas shal yidei hamesim. V'hem nikram seirim. These are the shadim. These are the seirim that hung out, that hovered over the bodies. That's what all they did. So that the nefesh does not separate from the body too far. They're going to have to call the operator, and the operator is going to say it's a collect call, it's not going to work. This is what they did. They anointed the whole body with oil. They took out the intestines. They did the 70 days. And the body lasts forever. You could go to Egypt today, you'll find these corpses. You could go to Paro today, knock on him, and he's hard like a stone, right? He's still Vayach made Hashem as Parai. Hashem, Nikram, Nikrayim Bilshainam Mumya. Right? Mummies. They call it mummy. Vahu Bechol Niches Refuis Latalo Mazar Harber Kenoda. They wanted to connect to these souls. That's why the Torah warns us, don't act like they did in Egypt. What? Don't be Darish al HaMesim. How are they Darish al HaMesim? Through Chanata. Now listen to this Maisa. I never heard this story. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe you could look it up, do some research. Ukvar heidu, there's a well-known Maisa, ki Yohan Pinti, Hasfardi. I don't know who that is. Right? There's a man by the name of Yohan Pinti. Nilkach, he escaped from Egypt with a bunch of mummies. Listen to this Maisa. Nilkach, besvina me'eretz mitzrayim be'echava v'tachblus. He escaped from Egypt on a boat with a bunch of mummies. Ki hamlach meinu ma'arshim lahotzi harbe tevis mleim mum yoshem pgar manal. The king obviously would not let him just, snatch out the mummies with permission. So he snuck out on a boat dozens of these mummies, And as soon as he got to the sea, these souls started going crazy. Wow. They started killing the soldiers on the boat, and Yohan had to throw all these mummies off the boat. There were many casualties on the boat, and he was lucky he was able to escape with his life. Look what he says. He got to the heart of the sea. The boat was full of these devils. They wanted to sink the boat. A lot of his soldiers were thrown overboard. They were killed. V'nitbu, they were drowned. V'nivtzu, they were attacked. Shehishach kol tevas hanal. He had to throw all the bodies into the sea. V'shakar hayam mizabai. Okay, that's what Rabbi Glatstein says is a well-known story. I never heard it before.
There was a movie on this.
Yeah?
Yes.
I missed it.
The Pirates of the Caribbean today.
Yeah?
Based on this.
So I don't know if you have any information you can print out for me.
There's a whole regiment of old neshamot that they go after and they bring to help them out. Whole regiment.
Yeah?
What year is this?
I don't know any more information than you see over here.
The time of
Rabbi Anderson? I don't know when he's saying they testify. Says, this is a very interesting thing. Says Rabbi Anderson Abishitz, that is why Yosef allowed Yaakov to be embalmed. Because Yaakov Avinu Loimes, he wanted the neshama of Yaakov Avinu to be with Klal Yisrael throughout the generations. Are we allowed to do this halacha l'maisa? No. Maritzchia says you can't learn out from what happened before Matan Torah. But did Yosef have a reason to do this? He wanted the neshama of Yaakov Avinu somehow to have a certain influence in this world. I don't understand how, but this is what he says.
What about himself?
Yosef?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe Yosef also. Maybe, look what he says, V'zet tam, shehiniach Yosef atzadik lachnor es aviv, kenog mitzrayim l'kaim gufay, kedei shal yidei kain, yeh nefesh Yaakov keshura, so that the soul of Yaakov should be bound, v'yelazarei achrav kiyom v'hagana l'chol ha'olam, and to be able to protect his descendants for all times. Ki oidenu nefesh Yaakov b'zeh olam, krucha achar kol guf v'guf hakayim. The soul of Yaakov Avinu has influence over every Jew. Uba'avura yetiv Hashem lanu, and because of the zchus of Yaakov, Hashem benefits us. Ki yeshoyer tzadik b'olam hazeh. Rabbi says something very interesting, and Emertz Hashem next week we'll move on to two other very important topics: autopsies and cremation. If you want, hold on to the sheets and bring it back next week. Otherwise, I could be your apotropos for you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.